The crown of dawn did not look like something that could change the fate of a species. It looked like a stone, an unremarkable, charred, pitted mineral lump scarcely larger than a clenched fist. Yet it had arrived from the sky in a burning arc of light that flattened the meadow outside the frontier settlement of High Verge, and anything that carved a crater into the world like a hammer striking an anvil was rarely just a stone. The settlers gathered around the still smoldering crater at dawn, murmuring among themselves, their breath forming pale steam in the chill mountain air. High Verge sat on the northern cliffs of the planet Veras, a wind-beaten world orbiting a quiet star far from the congested lanes of the settled galactic spheres. Few ships came, and those that did rarely came twice. The settlers had intentionally chosen isolation. They were idealists, many of them, part of a wave of wanderers seeking places unclaimed by the great political engines of the inner worlds. They wanted land, air, freedom from taxes, from dogma, from machine regimes that measured a citizen's worth in neural metrics and economic flow. Here, crops and soil and mountains were the only laws that mattered. So when something fell from the heavens, carving out a wound in the earth itself, it provoked in them a sense of cosmic intrusion, like a stranger stepping uninvited into a private home. Among the gathered settlers stood the person who would one day be remembered, though not for the reasons anyone might guess in that quiet moment. His name was Adarin Thorne, a former surveyor who had spent half his life charting unclaimed worlds for corporate cartographers before defecting from that life entirely. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weather-carved face one earned from years outside the sheltering walls of orbital habitats. He wore leather patched with old synthweave, boots hardened by decades of use, and a coat lined with pocketed tools that rattled softly when he moved. Adarin stood at the edge of the crater, peering down at the object within, the heat radiating against his cheeks. "Should we wait before approaching?" asked someone behind him. "It could be dangerous." "Everything is dangerous until we understand it," Adarin said without looking back. "Pass me the pole." A long metal rod was handed forward. Adarin gripped it, leaning down carefully, extending the rod until the tip nudged the stone in the center of the crater. It moved slightly, rocking on the scorched soil. No explosion, no flare of radiation, no hissing gas. Adarin dragged it closer until he could pick it up with thick gloves. It was surprisingly light, almost impossibly light. "Feels hollow," he murmured. A cold breeze stirred his hair as he lifted it. His gloves trembled not with his own motion, but from the faintest vibration traveling through the stone itself. Like a pulse, like a heartbeat. Adarin straightened, holding it to the early morning sun. It seemed to swallow the light instead of reflecting it. The crowd took several uneasy steps back. "What do you think it is?" called a woman near the front. "Meteorite? If it is, it's unlike any I've seen." That alone said much. Adarin Thorne had catalogued more than 900 celestial impacts across 6 star systems. He knew the ragged break texture of Nicolaian bodies, the glassy surfaces of silica fragments, the porous chondrites that crumbled when damp. This stone was none of those. Its surface was smooth in some places and jagged in others, its color an impossible black that seemed to drink the world into itself. And the vibrations, they were not random, they were patterned, a rhythm. When he held the stone against his ear, he heard nothing, not even the faint whisper of internal machinery, and yet his bones vibrated, his teeth tingled, his fingertips buzzed. Something inside the stone was reaching out, not through sound, but through contact. "We should bring it into the settlement," Adarin said at last. "Keep it under watch until someone arrives who can tell us more." "Who?" asked Elder Merath, the white-haired leader of High Verge, stepping forward with her staff. "We have no nearby allies. The inner worlds have forgotten us, and the outer spheres scarcely know we exist. Even so," Adarin lowered the stone. "Whatever this is, it didn't fall here by chance." Merath studied him with narrowed eyes. "You believe it was sent?" Adarin didn't answer, not immediately. Sent was a loaded word. To be sent implied intent, and intent implied intelligence. He looked instead at the sky, still streaked with the pale afterglow of the meteor's descent. "I believe," he said slowly, "that a stone that hums in my hand is not a stone." The crowd murmured again, not in fear this time, but in fascination. High Verge had been calm for years. The sort of place where the most excitement one could expect in a season was the arrival of a trader bearing spiraled fruit from the coastal lowlands. Now something new, something extraordinary had entered their world. Aderin carried the stone back toward the settlement as the sun rose, warming the frost on the rooftops. He walked past wooden homes carved from mountain timber, past solar arrays half buried under windblown dirt, past children staring wide-eyed at the object in his hands. Adults followed at a cautious distance. The earth stone, some of them whispered. The sky rock, the star heart, folk named things quickly in High Verge. It made them feel like they held power over whatever they named. Aderin brought the object to the central hall, a long, low structure reinforced with steel ribs salvaged from the colony ship that had brought their ancestors here. Inside, the air was warm, smelling faintly of herbs and old wood. Aderin set the stone on a metal table. The table vibrated immediately, its legs faintly rattling on the floor. Elder Murrath followed with three others: Jolan Crest, the settlement's physician, Hara Bren, the engineer responsible for maintaining the hydro turbines, and Tavin Rusk, a quiet but skilled hunter known for his keen instincts and suspicious nature. "I don't like this," Tavin said, crossing his arms. "No good comes from the sky. The sky gives storms, radiation bursts, and strangers who bring trouble." "The sky also gives light, warmth, and life," Hara countered. Tavin snorted. "Only because our ancestors made pacts with the machines that keep the sun tame." "Enough," Murrath said sharply. She turned to Aderin. "What do you feel from it now?" He placed both hands on the stone. The vibrations intensified instantly, running up his arms like ripples in water. His vision dimmed at the edges. His pulse matched the rhythm of the stone, da-dum, 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 in perfect synchrony. And then just for an instant, Aderin felt something impossible. He felt a mind, not a thought, not a word, not a voice, but the sense of contact, like fingertips brushing the surface of his consciousness. The moment passed so quickly he nearly doubted it had happened. He drew back sharply, breath catching. "There's something inside it," he whispered. "Alive?" Jolan asked. "Artificial?" Hara asked. "Neither," Aderin said. "Or both, I don't know, but it isn't inert." The physician approached and held a scanner over the stone. The screen flickered with waves and peaks that made no sense. "It's emitting something, but I can't identify the spectrum. It's not radiation, at least not any harmful type." "Can we open it?" Murrath asked. Hara approached with a set of tools, examining the surface. No seams, no screws, no adhesion points. She tapped it lightly with a microhammer. The stone gave a ringing sound completely inconsistent with its mass and density. The note lingered, echoing long after the strike. "It's resilient, stronger than steel. If we tried to cut it open, we'd break our tools long before we cracked it." "Then we observe," Murrath said. "We watch it and see what happens." They placed the stone inside a reinforced containment chamber fashioned originally for geological samples. Aderin watched it through the glass. Even in stillness, it seemed to breathe. The settlers returned to their daily tasks, but something had changed. The air felt charged with expectation. Children whispered stories. Adults exchanged uneasy glances. Aderin Thorne spent most of the afternoon in the hall, pacing, unable to shake the sensation of that brief mental touch. At sunset, when Murrath returned to dismiss him, he reluctantly walked back to his home at the settlement's perimeter. Aderin's home was a simple cabin overlooking the valley. He lit a lantern, set a pot of water on the stove, and sat by the window. Stars emerged slowly, glittering over the jagged teeth of the northern peaks. As he stared at the sky, the sensation returned, that subtle brush of thought, that ghost touch of awareness, except he was nowhere near the stone now. Aderin stood abruptly. He stepped outside, boots crunching on the gravel path. The air was sharp with pine scent. He walked toward the central hall. He was halfway there when he heard the first sound, not the hum of the stone, not the whisper of wind, but a low, thrumming resonance that vibrated through the ground itself. Aderin broke into a run. Lights flickered across the settlement, dogs barked, doors opened, people emerged, confused, frightened. "What's happening?" someone shouted. Aderin didn't answer. He reached the central hall just as Jolan and Hara burst out, panic etched across their faces. "Aderin," Hara shouted. "It's changing." They rushed back inside. Aderin followed. The containment chamber pulsed with light, deep, blood-red light that throbbed in time with the vibrations shaking the floorboards. The stone glowed from within, cracks of searing brightness spiderwebbing across its surface. "Get back," Aderin yelled. Several people stumbled backward. The walls rattled. The metal tables screeched across the floor. And then the stone split open, not in a violent explosion, but with a clean, silent parting like petals opening on a flower. Aderin shielded his eyes as brilliance poured out. The air grew warm, the vibrations ceased. As the light faded, Aderin slowly lowered his arm. In place of the stone sat a construct, a sphere of interlocking translucent plates, floating several centimeters above the table. Its surface shifted like liquid crystal, refracting the lamplight in shimmering patterns. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. The sphere turned, rotating slowly until a thin slit opened on one side, revealing a swirling interior of pale, luminous mist. Aderin took a step forward. Murrath grabbed his arm. "Wait." But the sphere pulsed slowly, deliberately, and Aderin felt that touch again, clearer this time, firmer, a presence, a mind, speaking not through language but through emotion, urgency, need, danger. "It's afraid," Aderin said quietly. The room fell completely silent. The sphere pulsed again, and a second wave of emotion washed over Aderin. Not fear this time, warning. "Something is coming," he whispered. "Something hunting it." A woman near the door stammered. "Hunting? What is it talking about?" The sphere shifted, patterns rippling across its surface. The luminous mist inside churned violently. And then the presence inside the sphere pushed into Aderin's thoughts with such force he staggered backward, gasping. A vision struck him, an endless starfield, a fleet of titanic dark shapes blotting out the light, a burning world, a signal sent through the void, a desperate cry flung across systems in a final attempt to survive. When the vision ended, Aderin fell to his knees, drenched in cold sweat. Hara ran to his side. "What did you see?" Aderin looked up at her, heart hammering. "It's not a message," he said. "It's not a relic." His voice trembled. "It's a refugee." The hall erupted into panic. Murrath shouted for order, but her voice was drowned by rising fear. People shouted questions: what had arrived, where it had come from, what danger it had brought. Aderin tried to stand, but his legs shook. The sphere floated toward him, emitting a low, steady tone that calmed the growing chaos. Slowly, the room quieted again. The sphere hovered inches from Aderin's face. The presence inside brushed against his mind with the gentleness of a hand on a shoulder. Not words, images, shapes, feelings, something trying desperately to communicate. "It wants trust," Aderin murmured. "It needs help." "Help with what?" Tavin demanded from near the door, suspicion thick in his voice. "Help running?" Aderin shook his head. "Help surviving." The mist inside the sphere flickered violently, and Aderin felt another surge of warning, a presence approaching, a shadow in the void. A hunger vast and merciless. "We need to send a signal," he said, staggering to his feet. "We need to warn the other settlements. We have no transmitters powerful enough to reach beyond our valley," Hara said, "and the inner networks are decades out of date here." Aderin turned to her. "Then we use the old array." Hara blinked. "The one on Skyfall Peak, that thing hasn't been activated in a generation. It's the only thing with enough range." Murrath shook her head firmly. "Even if we could start it, the storms up there make travel impossible this season." The sphere pulsed violently. Aderin felt an overwhelming surge of dread, not from the sphere itself, but from something it sensed, something drawing nearer. Nearer every moment. He looked at Murrath, voice tight. "We don't have a season, we don't even have days." "What are you saying?" Murrath whispered. Aderin looked toward the open door, toward the star-streaked sky beyond. A shiver crawled across his skin. "I'm saying," he murmured, "whatever destroyed its world has already found ours." And for the first time in his entire life, explorer, surveyor, wanderer of unknown systems, Aderin Thorn felt small, powerless. The sphere lowered itself into his hands, its warmth radiating through his palms, its inner presence tightening like a hand gripping his wrist. It was not speaking in words, but the meaning was unmistakable. "Help me, or we both die." Aderin's throat tightened. He nodded once. "Then we climb the mountain," he said. "We give the universe our answer." And so began the journey that would carry a frontier settlement small, forgotten, humble into a war older than empires and larger than legends. A war that would change humanity forever. A war in which Aderin Thorn would become something he had never once intended to be. A symbol, a commander, a spark, the beginning of a fire. Aderin Thorn had climbed Skyfall Peak once in his youth, a reckless ascent born of a wager and pride. It had nearly killed him then. Now, with a sphere of living crystal cradled against his chest and the weight of an entire settlement's fate resting heavy on his shoulders, the mountain loomed larger than memory allowed. Skyfall Peak rose like a spear of jagged stone thrust into the heavens, its slopes swept by permanent storms. The old array, a remnant of the first wave of humanity's reach into the outer systems, sat near its summit, perched on a ridge of black volcanic rock. No one in high verge had used it in decades. Some believed it no longer functioned at all. Others believed that turning it on might attract attention better left asleep in the dark. Aderin knew what they all secretly feared. The attention it could attract was already on its way. He strode quickly through high verge, the sphere glowing faintly against his chest. Behind him moved Hara Bren, her toolkit slung over one shoulder, her expression determined though pale. Tavin Rusk followed grudgingly, his bow and quiver strapped across his back. Elder Murrath stood at the eastern gate, leaning on her staff. The entire settlement had gathered to watch the small group depart, lanterns casting trembling halos in the dark. Aderin met Murrath's gaze. "Keep everyone inside," he said. "Arm who you can. Station watchers along the ridge. If anything enters the valley, anything, you must sound the horns." Murrath's jaw tightened. "I have lived long enough to know when fear is warranted, Aderin Thorn, and I believe you." Her eyes drifted to the sphere. "Does it offer any guidance?" Aderin glanced down. The sphere rotated slowly, its translucent plates shifting in soft, rhythmic patterns. "Only an insistence that time is short." "Then go," Murrath whispered, "and if the array wakes, send word, any word." Aderin nodded once, then turned away. The gates creaked open, and cold mountain wind poured through the gap, carrying the scent of snow and distant thunder. The three of them stepped beyond the walls, the gates closing behind them with a heavy thud that echoed like the ceiling of a tomb. The path to Skyfall Peak twisted through the valley, climbing along narrow ledges carved by settlers long dead. Moonlight spilled over the mountains in sheets of pale silver, illuminating frost-coated shrubs and the skeletal branches of wind-bent pines, their breath fogged in the frigid air. The sphere pulsed softly in rhythm with Aderin's heartbeat. After an hour of silence broken only by crunching snow and the distant cry of nightbirds, Tavin spoke. "Tell me again why we're doing this." Hara huffed. "Because unless we warn the other settlements, we are trapped here alone if something comes out of the sky." "Something," Tavin muttered. "You're both too polite to call it what it is. Whatever destroyed that thing's world is coming here next." "It's not a thing," Aderin said quietly. "It's someone." Tavin scowled. "Fine, the someone in the floating orb, the one that speaks without speaking and shows you visions of dying stars. Will you at least admit this is madness?" Aderin shifted the sphere in his arms. It warmed slightly, its inner glow brightening. "If madness is what keeps people alive, then I'll welcome it. You always were stubborn." Tavin sped up, moving ahead to scout the path. Hara fell into step beside Aderin. "Do you know what you saw?" she asked softly. "In that vision," Aderin inhaled the icy air. His breath steamed. "I saw a civilization burn. I saw ships, dark, immense, blot out stars. I felt the mind inside this sphere screaming as it fled. Whatever hunted it was relentless, merciless, not because of hatred, because of purpose. Purpose, Hara echoed. Like an extermination? Yes, Aderin said. Deliberate, efficient, absolute. Hara shuddered. Then why come here? Why send itself across the galaxy? Aderin looked down at the sphere again, its light reflected in his eyes. Maybe it believes humans can stop them. Can we? She asked. We do not even know who they are. Aderin glanced at the distant peak rising through the moonlit haze. I don't know, but if we don't try, we won't live long enough to find out. They pressed onward. The trail grew steeper, carved into the mountainside in narrow switchbacks that left little room for missteps. Loose stones skittered under their boots, tumbling into the abyss below. At one point, a gust of wind nearly knocked Hara sideways before Aderin caught her arm. Careful, he warned. Storms are stronger the higher we climb. Stronger, Hara panted. How strong do they get? Tavin, several paces ahead, answered grimly. Strong enough to strip bark from trees and tear roofs off cabins. The peak is worse, you'll see. After another hour, they reached the first shelter, a crude wooden lean-to built decades earlier by prospectors. They rested beneath it, sharing a flask of heated broth. The wind howled across the ridge like a living creature. Aderin held the sphere in his lap, feeling again the emotional echoes that radiated from within, curiosity, unease, and underlying both, a profound sorrow. It's grieving, Aderin murmured. Hara looked up from adjusting her gear. For its people, Aderin nodded. I think it was part of something like a collective, not a hive, nothing controlling or forced, more like companionship woven into every thought. When that connection was severed, it lost everything. Hara's expression softened. That's why it reaches into your mind. Yes, not to manipulate. To understand, to not be alone. Tavin returned from checking the path ahead. His expression was tense. We need to move, storms rolling in. They rose and stepped back into the freezing night. Lightning flickered above the peak, illuminating swirling clouds. The wind grew stronger, whipping snow sideways in thin sheets. Aderin tightened his grip on the sphere. Can you sense anything? He whispered to it. The sphere vibrated faintly. Images flickered across Aderin's mind, shifting shadows, distant mechanical hums, and above all, urgency. Not from the approaching storm, but from something else. Something far beyond the mountain. He shivered. The sphere was listening to the sky. Hours passed. The storm thickened. Snow lashed their faces, turning every breath into a battle. The path narrowed further until they hugged the cliffside, inching forward as wind tried to peel them away from the mountain. Hara shouted over the gale, "This is impossible. We won't make it to the array before dawn." "Then we don't wait for dawn," Tavin shouted back. The storms calm for a few moments. When the moon reaches its highest point, we're close enough to reach the next ridge. Aderin squinted through the blowing snow. The ridge ahead rose like a jagged spine beneath the clouds. The array's silhouette half collapsed, crooked protruded faintly near the summit. "Move," he yelled. They pushed upward. The storm roared, wind screaming across stone. Aderin slipped once, boots skidding on ice, and nearly fell before catching himself with one hand. The sphere pressed against his chest, protecting itself, or protecting him. They reached a jutting rock that offered partial shelter. They huddled for a moment, gasping. Tavin looked at the swirling sky with narrowed eyes. The storm's turning. Turning how? Hara demanded. Listen. Aderin held his breath. The wind moaned. The snow swept in spirals. But beneath it, beneath the thunder and the gale, there was something else. A low, rhythmic pulse unlike the natural cadence of storms. Aderin's stomach tightened. "That's not weather," he murmured. Tavin's hand dropped to the grip of his bow. "What is it then?" The sphere vibrated sharply against Aderin's chest. Images surged through his mind in a blur, black holes, angles sharper than bone, lights that burned like pale stars through void dark metal. Aderin's breath caught. "They're coming." Hara stared upward. "Already?" "Yes," Aderin whispered. "We have hours, maybe less." As if in answer, the storm above them flashed with a sudden streak of unnatural light. Not lightning, something falling. Something burning as it pierced the atmosphere. Tavin swore loudly. Move, now. They scrambled up the next incline, urgency lending strength to exhausted limbs. The path wound between two towering slabs of rock that formed a natural choke point. Snow piled waist-high in the narrow corridor. Aderin waded through, cradling the sphere above the drifts. Hara struggled behind him, slipping often. Tavin kept watch at the rear, scanning the sky. Another streak of light cut across the clouds, then another, and another, not random, not meteors. Aderin knew what they were before he spoke. Scouts. Scouts of what? Hara cried. Aderin's voice was grim. The hunters. They pressed forward, hearts pounding. The storm began to shift, its winds bending unnaturally as though drawn toward the falling objects. Aderin felt the sphere's fear like a raw edge scraping against his mind. It was not just afraid, it was remembering, reliving. He gritted his teeth and pushed onward. The path opened onto a broad plateau of exposed stone. Here, the wind tore across the mountain in violent bursts, scattering snow in spiraling clouds. The skeletal remains of the array towered above them, an enormous dish split down the middle, half crushed under boulders, its support beams twisted like broken ribs. We made it, Hara breathed. Barely, Tavin muttered. Aderin hurried toward the ruined structure. Closer up, he saw the old access hatch leading into the control bunker beneath the array. Snow was piled against it, but the hatch itself remained intact. Help me clear this, he shouted. They dug quickly, scraping away snow until the metal handle was visible. Aderin yanked it upward. It groaned, frozen hinges screaming, then reluctantly opened. Darkness yawned below. I'll go first, Aderin said. He lowered himself down the ladder, boots clanging on metal rungs. The bunker smelled of rust, dust, and stagnant air. He reached the bottom and lit a lantern from his pack. The bunker's interior emerged in the dim light: old consoles, shattered screens, coils of wiring, and a central control pillar that rose toward the ceiling like an ancient totem. It's intact, he whispered. Hara climbed down next, followed by Tavin. The three of them approached the control pillar. Hara immediately began examining its panels, brushing away layers of dust. Most of this is mechanical, that's good. Electronics may be dead, but if I can get power flowing to the transmit core. Aderin set the sphere on a flat metal surface nearby. It hovered slightly above the table. Patterns rippled across its plates. Can you interface? He asked it quietly. The sphere pulsed. Aderin placed his fingertips on its surface. A surge of sensation lanced through him, sharp, bright, overwhelming. The sphere was scanning the bunker, mapping circuits, understanding the layout in seconds. When the torrent of impressions faded, Aderin staggered back, dizzy. It knows what to do, he gasped. Hara blinked. It can link with the array. The sphere floated toward the central pillar. Its plates rotated, shifting into intricate patterns. Thin tendrils of light extended from its surface, brushing against the pillar's metal framework. A hum filled the bunker. Dust drifted from the ceiling. It's activating something, Hara said. We need auxiliary power. Tavin moved toward the side panel where an ancient crank generator protruded. I'll start the manual cycle. He grabbed the crank and began turning. The gears resisted, frozen from decades of neglect, but slowly, agonizingly, they began to turn. The bunker vibrated as power trickled through dormant conduits. Hara rushed between panels, pulling levers, flipping switches, adjusting dials. Come on, she muttered. Come on, old machine, wake up. Aderin watched the sphere as it pulsed brighter and brighter, its tendrils sinking deeper into the pillar. The hum intensified until the air itself seemed to tremble. Then a loud metallic bang echoed overhead. All three froze. Tavin stopped cranking. What was that? He whispered. Another bang, closer, followed by a grinding scrape across the array's exterior. Aderin's blood turned cold. They're here. Hara's face paled. Already, Aderin lifted the sphere. It vibrated violently, sending a shock of warning through him. They could not see the hunters, but the sphere could sense them. They were searching, probing, closing in. Keep working, Aderin said to Hara. Whatever happens, you must finish the activation. And you, she asked, I'll buy you time. Before she could argue, another resonant bang shook the bunker. Dust rained from the ceiling. Aderin grabbed his axe, an old but reliable tool, and climbed the ladder. Tavin cursed under his breath, slinging his bow over his shoulder as he followed. Snow whipped into his face the moment he emerged. The storm above had fractured into swirling vortices of wind and cloud. Dark shapes flickered between the swirling sheets of ice, not solid, not fully visible, but present, watching. "Do you see them?" Tavin murmured. "Not clearly," Aderin answered, "but they see us." A high-pitched whine pierced the air. One of the dark shapes lunged downward through the storm, its outline rippling like a predator cloaked in shifting shadow. It landed on the array's surface with a metallic screech. Aderin saw it clearly then, a creature, but not a creature. A construct of black alloy and living tissue, joints segmented like an insect's, limbs tipped with talons sharper than cut stone. Its head was a smooth, featureless curve, except for a single slit of glowing white light. Tavin drew an arrow. "What in the name of the stars is that?" "A hunter," Aderin said, "one of the ones that destroyed the sphere's world." The hunter's head tilted slightly as if studying them, then it lunged. Tavin fired. The arrow struck the construct's chest, splintering on impact. The creature barely reacted. Its clawed limbs swept toward Tavin with terrifying speed. Aderin intercepted with his axe. Metal struck metal with a ringing crack. The force hurled Aderin backwards, sliding across the icy stone. He barely kept his footing. The hunter advanced, silent, relentless. Aderin raised his axe again. "Tavin," he shouted, "get back to the bunker, not without you." Now, another hunter dropped from the swirling clouds, landing behind them. Its talons clicked against the stone as it oriented itself. "Go," Aderin roared. Tavin hesitated only a heartbeat, then dashed toward the bunker hatch. The first hunter lunged at him, but Aderin slammed into its side, driving it away from the hatch. The claws sliced across his coat, tearing through fabric and grazing skin. He grunted in pain but did not fall. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the hunters fully for the first time. They were horrors shaped with purpose, built for pursuit, for capture, for extinction. The storm bent around them as though even the wind refused to touch them. Aderin kept his footing, breath steaming. He tightened his grip on the axe. "Come on," he growled. "You want me? Then come take me." The hunter moved so fast Aderin barely saw it. He twisted aside, the talons missing his throat by inches. The second hunter circled behind him. Aderin swung wide, forcing both creatures to keep distance. He could not win, he knew it, but he could stall them. Below, the sphere pulsed violently as Hara connected the last of the power conduits. The control pillar lit with flickering blue arcs. Screens blinked weakly. "Almost there," she whispered. The sphere emitted a sharp tone, a warning. Something breached the outer corridor. Tavin shouted from above, "Hara, hurry!" She slammed the final breaker. The array shuddered. Energy surged. The dish above began to move, grinding against rust and stone. A beam of pale light shot upward, piercing the storm clouds. Aderin saw it through the chaos and felt a surge of relief. They had done it. The array was awake. The hunters reacted instantly. Both snapped their heads upward. Their bodies vibrated, emitting a chilling harmonic frequency. One lunged for the beam of light, its purpose to destroy the array. The other continued toward Aderin. "No, you don't," Aderin snarled. He charged the creature, swinging with every ounce of strength left in him. The blow connected with its arm, denting the black alloy slightly. The hunter turned its full attention on him. It struck faster than breath, talons plunging toward his chest. Aderin tried to block, but the force threw him backward. Pain exploded across his ribs. He hit the ground hard, vision blurring. The hunter loomed over him, arm raised for the killing strike. And then the sphere shot from the bunker like a comet of light. It slammed into the hunter's head with a blinding flash. The creature shrieked its first sound, an inhuman screech of dissonant metal. It stumbled, clawing at its own skull as the sphere's tendrils of light burrowed into its sensor core. The second hunter abandoned its attack on the array and lunged toward the sphere. "No," Aderin roared. He forced himself upright, pain screaming through his body, and hurled his axe. The blade struck the second hunter across the neck joint. The creature staggered, giving the sphere precious seconds. The sphere pulsed brilliantly and both hunters froze, not dead, disabled. Their limbs twitched erratically, motors misfiring, their glowing eyes flickered. The sphere drifted back toward Aderin, dimming weakly from the effort. He caught it, breathing hard. "Thank you," he whispered. The sphere rested against his chest, weary and flickering. Tavin emerged from the bunker, panting. "The signal's sent. Hara says it's reaching all the way to the southern settlements." "Good," Aderin said, voice hoarse. "Then we live another night." But the storm shifted again. Above them, more dark shapes materialized within the clouds. Dozens, maybe more. Tavin's face went pale. "We need to run." "No," Aderin said. He stared at the approaching shadows. "We need to fight." The hunters descended, their forms like living voids slicing through the storm. Aderin raised the sphere. It pulsed once weak but determined. "If they want us," he whispered, "they'll learn what it means to hunt humans." And the storm swallowed them all. The star harvester known as the Tremor of Dawns drifted in high orbit above a heavy giant whose swirling amber clouds reflected sunfire up along the harvester's hull. The vessel was a marvel of human persistence, its ribbed spines, drawn from alloyed metals, birthed in stellar furnaces, its sensor arrays extending like shimmering antennae toward the cold reaches of space. The Tremor of Dawns had served as the central staging point for the coalition humanity had gathered in the wake of the destruction of the outpost at Verdant's Reach, and every deck thrummed with activity as its crew prepared for the first unified retaliation against the creatures catalogued as the Severants. Yet even amid the bustle, an unspoken weight pressed on everyone aboard. The threat of the unseen predators whose seamless dark ships had punctured human territory without warning, whose methods of warfare felt nothing like the passions or ambitions of sentient minds, but rather like the instinctive operations of something ancient and deeply alien. The Tremor of Dawns had become a place of talking, arguing, sharpening, coordinating, and above all, waiting. Waiting had worn at the nerves of Commander Rowan Halberg more than any firefight or vacuum malfunction ever had. He strode through a wide corridor linking the command deck to the observational ring while half listening to the strained conversations around him. Crew members compared theories about the Severance, technology, parsed fragmented transmissions, or whispered about the drone captured in fragments at Verdant's Reach, a drone that seemed to be grown rather than built. Halberg passed a trio of technicians working along an open panel. One, his name was something elongated and unfamiliar, a sign of roots in the outer colonies, glanced up with a mixture of reverence and hesitation. They all knew Halberg had been among the survivors who dragged dozens of wounded out of collapsing habitats during the first attack. It gave him an aura he wished he never had to earn. The commander paused at the observation ring's transparent arc. The distant star cast long radiant bands across the space giant below, while the tactical overlays projected along the inner surface depicted ship movements, incoming supply barges, and a shimmering red band representing Severant incursions at the frontier. To Halberg's growing alarm, the red band had begun creeping forward in several places, as though probing for some unseen weakness. Rear Admiral Calum Rennet emerged at Halberg's side with the same uncanny timing he always seemed to possess. Rennet's calm voice held none of the edginess eating through the rest of the ship. "The final scouting reports are in," he said. "I was expecting you in the war room." Halberg nodded toward the projection. "I wanted one more look at the frontier lines." "It feels like they are watching us even now." Rennet exhaled thoughtfully. "Perhaps they are, but that's why we must strike first. You know what we discovered in Sector 41 Delta." Halberg remembered the footage, all too clearly: vast, hollowed-out sections of a rocky moon, neural filaments strewn across carved chasms, organic chambers pulsing like organs. "The Severants grew their machines within fleshy planetary hives," Rennet went on, "and we have only seen a small fraction of one such hive. If they anchor enough of these throughout inhabited space," Halberg finished the thought grimly, Humanity becomes livestock. Rennet moved to stand fully in front of him, his lined face illuminated by shifting tactical glow. Then meet me in the war room. We have decided on a target, and the moment we strike, the course of this conflict changes forever. Halberg followed him through several branching corridors. The war room doors parted, revealing a wide circular chamber alive with projections and layered hollow screens. Representatives from all across human space stood around the central table, military leaders, scientific councils, and envoys from distant colonies whose accents braided unfamiliar cadences into their speech. A hush fell as Halberg entered with Rennet. At the center, a three-dimensional layout of a distant stellar system shimmered into heightened clarity, painting the walls with cool blue light. One of the scientific directors stepped forward. "Behold System Orendale 6. Long-range probes confirm Severant presence. At least one hive fortress resides on the inner moon of the third planet. More crucially, the fortress appears not fully matured." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Halberg felt the shift instantly. A hive fortress grown, fortified, seeded with filament networks, and capable once matured of launching hundreds of Severant warforms was the enemy's backbone. A yet unfinished fortress was the closest thing to a vulnerable point humanity had encountered. A strategist from the frontier colonies folded her arms. Probes also detected structural inconsistencies. The fortress appears to be partially dormant, possibly in a growth stasis. Rennet nodded, which means two things. First, their life-growing engines are halted for reasons unknown, perhaps a resource deficit, perhaps a miscalculation in the star's radiation band. Second, if we attack now, we might achieve what many thought impossible. We might tear down one of their hives and learn what drives them. Halberg stared at the gently rotating projection. The idea of it striking directly at the enemy, inflicting a true wound, felt like a solar flare bursting through the gloom. Yet doubt laced itself through his thoughts. What about detection? Their patrols have shown uncanny pattern recognition. What makes us believe we can get close? The director manipulated the projection, expanding the region near the moon. A magnetic disturbance near the planet creates natural interference. The fortress sits partially within it. We believe that if a strike fleet threads the edge of the disturbance, the Severants will not detect them until it is too late. Another representative stepped forward. "We are requesting permission to deploy not just ships, but our most recent innovation, lattice disruptors capable of destabilizing organic lattice growth structures." Halberg's mind raced. "Those devices are untested." "Yes," the representative admitted, "but we know the Severance structures resonate at predictable intervals. A directed overload could fracture a hive chamber. If we can direct even one disruptor to the core, the entire fortress might collapse inward." Rennet looked at Halberg. "Commander, you will lead the central assault wing." Halberg blinked. "Me? Your record at Verdant's Reach shows you can improvise under conditions where conventional tactics fail, and we need a leader who will adapt the moment the unexpected occurs. That moon will house more horrors than anything we have encountered." A strange steadiness filled Halberg. He bowed his head once. "I accept." The chamber seemed to ignite with movement as plans solidified, data exchanged hands, and orders spiraled outward across the ship. Halberg found himself swept into the storm of preparation, yet underneath it all he felt the faintest tremor of something new: hope. The strike fleet departed 2 days later under a veil of refracted starshine. Sleek warships peeled away from the Harvester in orderly arcs, their hulls shimmering with adaptive plating as they accelerated toward the edge of the interference zone. Halberg stood aboard the spearhead frigate Resolute Ascent, feeling the deep thrumming of its drives through the soles of his boots. The bridge crew moved with disciplined urgency, each person knowing full well the risk of breaching the enemy's most sacred structure. As the interference fields thickened around the ship, the stars beyond the viewscreens shimmered like shifting oil. Halberg kept one hand braced on the command rail. "Status of our escort wings." the communications officer replied. Outer wing reports adjusted course. Inner wing maintaining formation. Lattice disruptor carrier is holding position around the second trajectory curve. The science officer added, interference levels rising. Severant detection sweeps none registered. Hold this course, Halberg said. If the fortress is half asleep, let it continue dreaming. Hours later, the moon emerged through the warped haze, a grey sphere scarred by ridges and pockmarked depressions. Embedded into its surface, like a gargantuan blister, was the hive fortress. Its organic walls pulsed faintly, spreading across the lunar terrain in ribbed arcs. Massive vents exhaled intermittent vapor, like the weak breaths of a slumbering beast. And yet, despite its dormancy, Halberg sensed an ominous tension in the air, a readiness beneath the stillness. The fleet spread into attack formation. Halberg steadied his breathing. Deploy disruptor escort. Prepare to descend into the lower ridge. The moment the fleet advanced, the fortress stirred. Halberg felt it rather than witnessed it at first, a shift in atmosphere aboard the ship, as if some invisible gaze had turned toward them. Then the sensors flared. Energy spike, the officer shouted. Something inside the fortress just awakened. Strands along the hive's outer walls illuminated in sickly bioluminescent waves that rippled outward. Halberg snapped, accelerate, all ships, break into strike vectors, hit them before the defenses activate. The resolute ascent dove through a pressure wave of defensive spores released into vacuum, the particles shimmering as they disintegrated on the ship's shielding. Other vessels sliced through gaps between rising tower-like protrusions extruding from the hive's surface. Then the first Severant warforms launched. They were not ships, not in the human sense. They resembled twisted, winged organisms whose elongated carapaces bore metallic reinforcement and whose thrusters glowed with an eerie internal heat. Their movements were fluid and organic, darting like predatory insects. The fleet met them with explosive volleys. Halberg's wings surged forward, firing concentrated blasts that shattered several warforms into drifting fragments of shell and blood-like fluid. Yet more emerged, swarming in spirals that tested the fleet's coordination. Maintain the corridor, Halberg commanded. Disruptor carrier advance. As the battle intensified, the disruptor carrier maneuvered toward a cavity in the fortress wall, a Moor-like opening framed by twitching organic ridges. Halberg's ship and its escorts cleared a path with brutal precision. The disruptor carrier launched the device, a sphere of pulsating metal-laced crystal. It streaked toward the cavity, trailing arcs of distortion. A roaring tremor, not sound, but vibration through space itself, pulsed outward as the disruptor detonated within the fortress. The hive convulsed. Massive cracks split across its surface. Several bioluminescent strands dimmed instantly. The Severant warforms faltered mid-flight, some collapsing lifelessly. Halberg's eyes widened. It worked. But then the moon itself shuddered. "Commander," cried the science officer, "the fortress is undergoing a systemic reaction. Something deep inside is waking fully, and it's not dying. It's changing." A vast segment of the hive peeled open like a ruptured chrysalis, revealing a towering construct within, part machine, part organism, its limbs coiling in mechanized rhythm. It rose on three trunk-like appendages, shedding layers of dormant tissue. Its body glowed with incandescent veins. "A prime warform," someone whispered. Halberg tightened his grip on the rail. "Target that thing with everything we have." The prime warform unleashed a spiraling beam of white-hot energy that lanced through one of the escort ships, slicing it apart. Halberg felt the shockwave rattle the bridge as debris scattered across the lunar horizon. Yet even amid destruction, the fleet rallied with ferocious unity. Fighters dived beneath the creature's limbs, launching torpedoes into weak points revealed by the disruptor's effects. Larger cruisers fired sustained beams that scorched the warform's outer plates. The prime warform struck back with savage strength, but each blow it delivered was met with another from Halberg's determined force. Finally, the combined barrage tore through its central core. With a soundless convulsion, The warform collapsed inward, its molten veins dimming as its body crumpled. The hive fortress sagged. Great fissures tore it apart. The internal chambers, once shielded by layers of living armor, crumbled into dust and broken tissue. Halberg exhaled shakily. All wings, pull back. The fortress is collapsing. As the fleet rose away from the moon, the hive imploded, splitting open like a cosmic wound and sending plumes of organic debris drifting into space. The moon's surface shook under the shockwave, fractures racing outward like spiderweb cracks. Humanity had done it. Against all odds, they had destroyed a Severant hive. But as the fleet regrouped, alarms flared once more. Halberg turned sharply. "What now?" the communications officer swallowed. "Commander, a long-range transmission from an unidentified source. It is not Severant." Rennett's voice crackled through the comms from the tremor of dawns. "Patch it through directly to Commander Halberg. This may change everything." A new projection slowly materialized. A figure emerged, tall, with delicate bioluminescent patterns across its skin, its eyes shaped in a way no human species bore. Its voice resonated with harmonic complexity. "Children of the younger star," it said. "You have slain what you do not yet comprehend. The Severants were not our enemy first, but they have become yours now, as they once became ours. Hear us, for if you continue on this path without knowing the truth, the great spiral shall turn in a way none of your kind are prepared to endure." Halberg felt the air leave his lungs. A new species had revealed itself. And with it, an entirely new layer of the conflict had just begun. The projection lingered in the air like an unspoken verdict. Its shimmering contours flickered with the interference fields still surrounding the strike fleet, giving the alien figure an almost ethereal instability, as though it existed both here and far beyond. Commander Rowan Halberg stood silent on the bridge of the resolute ascent, pulse hammering in his throat. The crew had stopped breathing altogether. The alien's luminous eyes shifted with slow deliberation, observing the humans with what looked like neither fear nor hostility, but a profound, ancient sorrow. When it finally spoke again, its voice resonated not through the speakers, but as though through the hull itself, a layered tonal cadence that carried as much feeling as meaning. "We are known as the witnesses beyond the veil," the being said, "though that name is a shadow of what we once were. Our true word cannot be spoken in your tongues, shaped as they are from the breath of younger worlds. You may call me Kuranen." Halberg forced his voice to remain steady. "You sent a transmission across an active battle zone. How did you locate us?" A ripple of bioluminescent patterns pulsed across the alien's skin, something akin, perhaps, to a sigh. "Because we have been watching you for longer than you may wish to believe. The Severants are not merely your foe. They are the vestige of a calamity that reshaped the destinies of countless civilizations, and now you stand upon the threshold of the same descent." Admiral Rennett's face appeared in a smaller projection beside the alien's, his expression stern. "State your intentions. Humanity will not bow to anything Severant or otherwise." Kuranen inclined its head slightly. "We do not come to rule you. We come because you have done what few younger species have managed. You have wounded a hive fortress. You have revealed yourselves as a variable in the great spiral, and so we must speak, before events eclipse all hope of choice." Halberg stepped forward. "Then speak plainly. What are the Severants?" Kuranen's luminous gaze softened, with an emotion Halberg could not identify. "The Severants are the remnants of a civilization that once stretched across thousands of star systems. They were ancient when our kind awakened. Their minds were brilliant, curious, expansive, but brilliance twisted too far becomes its own undoing. They sought to perfect themselves through living machinery melding conscious thought with engineered instinct. The first generation succeeded. The second refined the process. By the third, they transcended hunger, fear, and doubt. The patterns across the alien's skin dimmed. By the fourth, they began to shed empathy. The bridge remained silent. Kuranen continued. They reshaped themselves into beings who needed no rest, no warmth, no companionship, only the drive to propagate their own vision of order. Their hives became wombs for their new bodies, their minds distributed through organic lattice networks. They learned to consume star systems not out of malice, but because their re-engineered nature knew no other path. They were no longer a people, they were a process. Halberg's stomach tightened, a process that attacks anything alive. Anything sentient, Kuranen corrected softly. Because sentience represents possibility, unpredictability, variation. And variation is the one thing their rewritten minds cannot tolerate. Rennett's voice cut sharply across the channel. If you have known all this, why remain silent until now? Why not intervene when they destroyed Verdant's reach? Why wait until humanity lost thousands of lives before revealing yourselves? For the first time, something like shame crossed the alien's expression. Because the Severants have learned to detect us. If we reveal ourselves too openly, they awaken a deeper stratum of their instincts, a fury that once laid waste to the oldest civilizations our histories recall. We have hidden ourselves in the folds of space for millennia, guiding without touching. Its eyes deepened with sorrow, but when you destroyed the Hive Fortress, you announced yourselves to the spiral. The Severants will no longer see you as distant noise, they will see you as a threat, and they will come. Halberg felt his chest constrict. So we should have stayed passive, let them devour our colonies. Kuranen's patterns brightened faintly. No, your defiance is what brought us here. A tremor of confusion rippled across the bridge. Kuranen raised a long-fingered hand. The surrounding projection shifted, expanding into a star map vastly larger than any human archive. Halberg recognized only a few familiar constellations, everything else was alien, marked with symbols that resembled geometric constellations woven with strands of light. This, Kuranen said, is the region once held by the Severants at the height of their expansion. The stars marked in crimson are systems they consumed entirely. Those in silver were those they attempted to reshape before their downfall. Halberg frowned. Their downfall? A flicker of pain crossed Kuranen's features. Yes, the Severants once faced a union of civilizations far older and wiser than yours, but that union fractured. Some turned their weapons inward, others hid, others died. And so the Severants linger not alive, not dead, driven by the echoes of a directive they no longer fully understand. Rennet folded his arms. Then if they've weakened, now is the time to finish them. Kuranen's eyes glinted. Against one Hive Fortress, perhaps, against the true depth of their network, the projection shifted again. Halberg felt the hairs along his neck rise. The new map showed not hundreds, but thousands of blinking red points scattered through vast expanses of the galaxy, each a dormant hive, slumbering beneath layers of dust, asteroids, forgotten moons. These are the sleeping scars of their ancient dominion, Kuranen said. Not all are active. Many will remain dormant for ages yet. But each holds the potential to awaken should the Severants detect major interference. Halberg stiffened. Did destroying that fortress wake more of them? The patterns across Kuranen's skin pulsed in a somber rhythm. We do not yet know, but it is possible. Halberg felt a chill settle across the bridge. The alien continued, yet there is hope. Among the younger species we observed, only yours has learned to adapt swiftly, to fight intuitively, to respond with creativity in the face of overwhelming threat. Your species does not break easily. You bend, you endure, and such resilience is something the Severants cannot predict. Halberg forced himself to breathe. You said you've been watching us. Why, what do you want? Kuranen extended one hand. A new projection unfurled, this one showing a swirling mass of energy bound between lattice-like structures. Halberg recognized it instantly, the Severant lattice core, except this one was inactive, its structures cracked and dim. Long ago, Kuranen said, our people discovered a way to disrupt the Severance network. But the method required something we lacked, something your kind has in abundance. Halberg's pulse quickened. Stop speaking in riddles. Kuranen's eyes glowed brighter. Emotion. The bridge erupted in confusion. Halberg blinked. Emotion? Yes, Kuranen said. The Severance eradicated emotion to remove unpredictability. But in doing so, they made themselves vulnerable to certain patterns of neural resonance, patterns that only species like yours, those who still understand grief, anger, love, and defiance, can produce. Halberg stared in disbelief. You're saying humanity can kill them using feelings? Not in so crude a manner, Kuranen said gently. But your neural structures generate frequencies that destabilize their lattice minds. With proper amplification, such resonance could fracture not just a hive, but their entire network. Rennett's expression darkened. You want to weaponize human consciousness. Kuranen bowed its head. In truth, we wish to teach you how to protect yourselves. Whether you use that knowledge as a weapon is your decision alone. Halberg stepped closer to the projection. You said the Severants cannot understand variation. They cannot predict us. Does that mean we have a chance to stop them? Kuranen regarded him for a long, quiet moment. When it spoke, its voice felt like a weight settling over the room. You have more than a chance. You have the potential to succeed where countless others failed, but you must be willing to walk a path no other species has walked. Halberg tightened his jaw. What path? The projection shifted once more, this time, displaying a structure far different from anything Severant or human. It resembled a great spiral of interlocking rings, each turning independently, yet forming a single vast mechanism. This, Kuranen said, is the Crucible of Echoes. It was created long before our time by those who defeated the first Severant uprising. It is a place where minds may be amplified, where emotion becomes force, where consciousness becomes shield. Halberg frowned. A psychic amplifier, a conceptual amplifier, Kuranen corrected. Not thought, not will, but essence. Humanity carries a spark that resonates within the crucible. If awakened fully, that spark could shatter the oldest foundations of the Severant network. Rennett's voice hardened. Why not use it yourselves? Because our species has changed, Kuranen murmured. We have lived too long in hiding. Our emotions have thinned. Our resonance has diminished. We cannot ignite the crucible. But your people may yet do so. Halberg studied the swirling rings in the projection, feeling the gravity of the moment coil around him. And where is this crucible located? Kuranen hesitated. We will guide you, but be warned, reaching it will draw the Severants' attention. They will sense the disturbance. They will come in numbers far exceeding what you have faced. Numbers don't scare us, Halberg said quietly. Losing without meaning does. Kuranen's luminous eyes softened with something like respect. Then we will aid you, but before we proceed, you must understand one final truth. The projection zoomed outward, showing a massive dark sphere encircled by Severant architecture, vast, spined structures feeding into its surface like enormous roots. Halberg felt his breath freeze. What is that? The heart of the great spiral, Kuranen whispered. The first hive, the core from which all Severant consciousness originates. It slumbers now, deeper than any of the others. A pulse of dread rippled across the room. If the crucible awakens fully, the alien continued, the heart will stir. And when it does, humanity will face the storm that once ended empires older than your star. Halberg's voice came out low, steady. Then tell us what must be done. Kuranen inclined its head. Very well, prepare your fleet, gather your brightest minds, brace your spirits, for what comes next will test not merely your strength, but the very essence of what it means to be human. The transmission ended. The projection faded. Silence reclaimed the bridge. When Halberg finally spoke, his voice carried a resolve harder than iron. All wings, he ordered, set a course for rendezvous with the tremor of dawns, prepare for full strategic assembly. His eyes narrowed toward the distant stars. We've been reacting to the Severance long enough. Now we move first. No one questioned him. Humanity would forge its own fate through fear, through fury, through defiance, through everything that made their species unpredictable, passionate, and profoundly, ungovernably alive. And somewhere in the deep void beyond their senses, ancient hive minds stirred. The journey to the Crucible of Echoes began under a shroud of tension, so heavy it seemed to bend the air aboard every vessel in the assembled human fleet. The tremor of dawns, once a steady beacon of coordination, and resolve felt changed. Its vast corridors teemed with crew who walked with a mixture of purpose and dread, their expressions tight as though each breath carried the weight of what was to come. For the first time since humanity had encountered the Severants, there was a destination not born of reaction, but of choice. A journey towards something unknown yet vital. And every person in the fleet understood that this path would lead them to the brink of annihilation or ascend them into something entirely new. Commander Rowan Halberg stood on the observation deck one last time before departure, arms folded behind his back. Below him, the amber clouds of the giant planet swirled endlessly, a reminder of the smallness of individual struggle against cosmic forces. Yet Halberg felt anything but small. There was a fire inside him, a fierce clarity driven not by vengeance or fear, but purpose. Humanity had been pushed, bloodied, and cornered, but now they had a direction, a chance to strike where it mattered most. The doors behind him slid open. Admiral Calum Rennet approached with footsteps that echoed sharply in the quiet chamber. "They are ready," Rennet said. "All wings, all supply barges, all support craft. The tremor of dawns will coordinate the fleet from midpoint. You will lead the vanguard." Halberg nodded slowly, "And the witness, waiting in the hollow room. They have prepared a navigation matrix for us." Rennet paused. "They also warned that once we activate the course, the Severants will sense it." Halberg held the Admiral's gaze. "Let them come." Rennet's expression softened with something like distant pride. "I used to think humanity's greatest strength was our instinct to survive. After Verdant's reach, and now this, I realize it is also our instinct to stand up when survival seems impossible." "We have no other choice," Halberg replied simply. Together, they returned to the central hollow room. The space had already dimmed to accommodate the witness's presence. Kuranen stood at the center, its tall silhouette illuminated by flowing strands of light that spiraled around it like living threads. As Halberg approached, the alien turned its radiant eyes toward him, the patterns on its skin shifting in rhythmic pulses. "The crucible lies beyond what your maps call settled space," Kuranen said. "It rests within a fold of subspace where few species dare travel. Its creators shaped its entrance to respond to resonance, not machinery. Your ships will not find it unless guided by a mind capable of igniting its threshold." Rennet frowned. "Are you saying we need a specific person?" "No," Kuranen replied. "Humanity itself is the key. The crucible lessons for collective essence, not an individual voice, but someone must lead your resonance, someone whose mind remains unwavering amid fear, whose emotional presence ripples outward with clarity." Rennet looked at Halberg. The gesture felt like a confirmation of something both men had already understood. Halberg stepped forward. "Tell me what I need to do." Kuranen extended a hand. A holographic pattern unfurled, an intricate dance of spiraling threads, forming a shape that reminded Halberg of an expanding helix. "This is the Gate of Echoes. When your fleet arrives at the coordinates, you must allow your mind to enter the gate's harmonic field. You will not be harmed if your spirit remains steady. Your emotional resonance will open the path." Halberg studied the pattern. "And if I fail," Kuranen's voice darkened, "then the path collapses. The crucible will remain dormant, and the Severants will sense the disturbance, meaning they will come regardless." "Yes," Halberg inhaled slowly, "then we do not fail." The fleet departed within the hour. Hundreds of ships launched in synchronized arcs, engines blazing as they streaked through the interference zone and out into open space. Halberg led the vanguard aboard the resolute ascent, the ship's hull gleaming with faint reflections of the distorted starfields passing around them. Every crew member was at their station, hands steady though tension thrummed beneath the surface of every spoken order. The navigation matrix Kuranen provided warped the starlings themselves. They traveled through gravitational corridors that felt unnatural, narrow, shifting. Colors Halberg had never seen before shimmered at the edges of perception. The hull vibrated with frequencies outside the normal audible spectrum. More than once, the crew exchanged uneasy glances as though sensing unseen presence beyond the veil of reality. On the third day of traversal, a deep, resonant hum filled the ship. Halberg stiffened. "Report." The chief navigator swallowed. "We've reached the anomaly." The view screen brightened. Before them, space rippled like a liquid surface disturbed by wind. It was neither a nebula, nor a wormhole, nor anything Halberg had encountered. It was a wound in space, a spiraling structure made of luminous filaments that rotated slowly, each ring moving independently, yet all contributing to a vast, unified form. The Gate of Echoes. The fleet halted at a safe distance. Communications from the tremor of dawns crackled through. "Commander Halberg," Rennet said, "you know what you must do." Halberg nodded once, initiating approach. As they advanced, the spiraling rings intensified in brightness, their glow bathing the resolute ascent in shimmering radiance. The hum deepened until it felt as though it emanated directly from Halberg's chest. The witness appeared beside him in projection form, its expression unreadable. "Clear your mind," Kuranen whispered, "but not of emotion, of doubt." Halberg closed his eyes. He breathed slowly, letting memories flow not to be purged, but to solidify him. His sister laughing as they chased each other across a childhood hillside. The faces of the wounded he had carried from the collapsing corridors of Verdant's Reach. The first time he saw the stars from orbit, realizing how small and vast life truly was. The grief, the determination, the unyielding human drive to remain standing. A warmth spread through him. When he opened his eyes, the spiral rings glowed brighter, responding. A beam of radiant light extended from the center of the gate and touched the resolute ascent's bow. The ship trembled, yet held firm. The rings accelerated. Their glow intensified until they became a radiant storm. "We are being drawn in," the pilot cried. "Hold course," Halberg commanded. "Do not resist." The ship surged forward, pulled into swirling cascades of luminous energy. The bridge dissolved into blinding white. Then everything went silent. When the light dissipated, the ship drifted into a vast expanse, unlike any region of space Halberg had ever known. A colossal structure hovered before them, a spiraling colosseum of floating rings, ruins, and drifting monoliths inscribed with symbols so ancient they seemed carved into reality itself. Energy crackled between its components in tendrils of shimmering light, the crucible of echoes. It pulsed slowly, like the heartbeat of a dormant titan. The fleet emerged behind the resolute ascent one by one, each vessel appearing in a burst of fractal light. A collective gasp reverberated through the comm channels. "We made it," Halberg whispered. Kuranen's projection reappeared. "This is the birthplace of resonance. The sphere at its core contains the harmonic lattice capable of awakening the force that once shattered the Severance Empire." Halberg stared at the vast spirals rotating around a central glowing sphere. "What must we do?" "You must enter." Halberg blinked. "Physically?" "Yes," Kuranen said. "The crucible must feel your presence, your people's presence. Only those who carry the spark may complete the connection." "Send a boarding crew," Rennet said over the comm. Kuranen raised a hand. "No, only a few may enter without risking destabilization. Too many minds at once could overwhelm the lattice." Halberg turned to his bridge crew. "Prepare a boarding shuttle. I'll take a small team." The shuttle launched moments later. Halberg, two specialists, and the witness itself. As they approached the central platform, Halberg felt the air vibrate despite the vacuum outside vibrate within his very bones. The platform's surface was etched with spirals that shifted as though alive, rearranging themselves into patterns that resonated with each step he took. When Halberg reached the central sphere, Kuranen placed a hand on the surface. The sphere awoke. Light erupted across the platform, rising in tendrils that coiled around Halberg like luminous vines. His breath caught. Images flashed through his mind, fleeting, incomprehensible. Stars exploding, civilizations rising and falling, a tide of Severant warforms sweeping across ancient worlds. And then images of humans laughing, fighting, grieving, loving, emotion flooding into the crucible like a storm. Kuranen's voice echoed, This is the resonance, let it flow. Halberg felt his memories surge outward, not pulled but offered. One of his specialists staggered back, overwhelmed, but Halberg remained firm. Emotion not just his own, but the collective weight of those who had fought, suffered, endured coursed through the crucible. The structure replied. A shockwave of golden light burst from the sphere and arced outwards. Across the fleet, sensors blared as energy readings spiked to immeasurable levels. The entire crucible pulsed brighter, 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 then the tremors began. From the distant void beyond the crucible, a single point of darkness ignited, not light absence of it. A vast, oppressive presence stirred from the depths of space, emerging like a colossus awakening from an age-long sleep. Halberg felt the temperature around him drop even within his suit. What is that? Kuranen's patterns dimmed with fear. The disturbance has awakened the heart. Halberg's pulse hammered. The first hive? Yes, Kuranen whispered. And it has sensed you. Warning sirens blared across the fleet. The dark point expanded, unfurling tendrils of chitin and metal, a monstrous spherical superstructure larger than moons. Its surface crawled with living armor. Thousands of Severant warforms spilled from its flanks like a swarm of locusts pouring from a ruptured nest. Communications exploded. Massive signatures incoming. It's coming straight for the crucible. Commander, what do we do? Halberg gritted his teeth. We hold. Commander, the specialist said, voice cracking. We hold, Halberg repeated. Humanity did not come this far to die running. The resonant wave reached its peak. The crucible's glow intensified, tendrils of golden energy coiling upward. Halberg understood. We finish what we started, he whispered. Sweat beaded across his brow. He dug deep, summoning everything inside him. Fear, hope, memory, rage, love, every emotion that defined his species. He screamed not in pain, but in defiance. The crucible erupted. A beam of golden resonance surged outward, striking the oncoming heart. Shockwaves rippled across space. Severant warforms convulsed mid-flight, crashing into one another as the resonance tore through their minds. The heart shuddered violently, its outer layers buckling under the impossible strain. But it did not die. Kuranen cried out. Again, hold nothing back. Halberg gripped the sphere, pouring every last ounce of will into the crucible. The beam intensified until it became a roaring column of pure resonance. The heart split along its central axis, cracks racing across its surface. Thousands of Severant signatures winked out as their minds collapsed. Still it fought on, still it endured, still it came. Halberg felt himself fading. His strength waning, his consciousness fraying at the edges. Then he felt something else. A presence, no many presences. Across the fleet, every human who felt fear, hope, fury, resolve, all of them reached out unknowingly. Their emotional resonance traveled through the crucible, amplified beyond measure. Halberg felt their minds, millions of them adding to his own, together, united in defiance. The crucible roared, the heart shattered. A shockwave of golden energy ripped through space, vaporizing the heart and every Severant vessel in its shadow. The surviving swarm fled in disoriented spirals, their lattice minds fractured. The crucible dimmed. The platform fell silent. Halberg collapsed to one knee, panting. Kuranen steadied him, its expression glowing with awe. You did it, the witness whispered. You awakened the resonance. Halberg rose slowly, trembling but alive. Across the comms, cheers erupted. Some wept openly. Others shouted victory into the void. Humanity had survived the first storm, but Kuranen's voice cut gently through the celebration. Commander Halberg, the Severants will not vanish entirely. They will rebuild. But now they fear you. Now they know humanity carries the spark that once defeated them. Halberg stared out at the fleet, at the survivors, the broken ships, the brilliant glow of the crucible. Then let them fear us, he said softly. We will build, we will prepare, and if they return, we will stand again. Kuranen bowed its head. The great spiral has turned. A new age begins. As the fleet gathered around the crucible, Halberg felt a quiet certainty settle within him. Humanity had entered the cosmic stage not as prey, not as bystanders, but as a force capable of reshaping the galaxy itself. And somewhere in the distant dark, The remnants of the Severants writhed, knowing their era of unquestioned dominion had ended. Humanity had risen. Humanity had endured. Humanity had become the unpredictable spark the galaxy had forgotten to fear. The crucible's glow faded gradually, leaving the resolute ascent and its companions floating in the aftermath of the resonance storm. Halberg's body ached, as if every muscle had been stretched beyond its limits, yet the exhaustion carried no despair, only a profound clarity. Around him, the fleet slowly reassembled, vessels bearing the marks of the battle but intact, their crews alive and shaken, yet resolute. Reports streamed through comms. Swarms of Severant warforms had been reduced to scattered remnants, many fleeing into unknown regions of space, their coordination broken, their hive-minds fractured. Humanity had delivered a wound so deep that the echo would ripple across the galaxy for generations. Kuranan's projection hovered near Halberg, luminous patterns dimmed now to a soft glow, reflecting relief and something like measured pride. The crucible has absorbed your essence, amplified it beyond its previous limits. The heart is shattered, but not entirely destroyed. Its fragments will linger, scattered through the void, dormant but alert. It will take centuries, perhaps millennia, to recover if it ever does. You have bought time. Halberg nodded, still gripping the remnants of his strength. Time is what we need. Time to rebuild, to prepare. We've only just begun to understand what we're up against. He turned to face Kuranan. And you, will you remain? Will you guide us further? The witness tilted its head, the patterns across its skin rippling like water over stones. We will remain in contact. We have observed your kind, but now you are visible to the spiral. We will offer counsel where possible, yet the next steps must be chosen by humanity alone. The crucible amplifies your essence, but it cannot dictate the choices of your species. You are unpredictable. That is your power. Halberg exhaled slowly. The weight of command pressed down on him, heavier now than any physical strain endured in battle. Then we must choose wisely. The fleet began moving away from the crucible, back toward known space. As they traveled, reports of liberated colonies filtered in. In the void around Orindale 6 and Verdant's Reach, human engineers began to reclaim shattered stations and devastated habitats. Each success felt like a small affirmation. Humanity's survival was not a matter of chance. They had faced annihilation and emerged not only alive but strengthened, their defiance carved into the cosmos itself. Despite the victory, Halberg knew the war was far from over. Even shattered, the Severants' scattered hives posed a threat. Somewhere in the darkness, fragments of the heart's consciousness stirred, carrying with them the memory of the crucible's strike. It would take centuries for humanity to fully understand the ramifications of what had occurred, and yet there was no time to waste. Every ship, every colony, every mind counted now. The galaxy had become a chessboard of staggering scale, and humanity had claimed a piece that could tip the balance. In the quiet moments aboard the resolute ascent, Halberg walked the observation deck once more, staring into the infinite expanse of stars. He thought of the faces of the crew, of the witnesses who had guided them, of the sacrifices and fear and courage that had led to this moment. Somewhere in the darkness, the Severants would be regrouping, learning from their failures. Somewhere, the galaxy itself waited, patient and indifferent, to see how humanity would rise in the age to come. Kuranan's voice interrupted his contemplation. Commander, you must understand the crucible has altered more than the Severants. It has awakened possibilities in your kind. The resonance flows now through every human mind that survived the activation. You carry it forward. Halberg nodded. Then we will not waste it. Humanity will endure, we will adapt, we will resist, and we will fight no matter what comes next. The witnesses' patterns shimmered faintly, almost like a smile. Then the spiral begins anew. The age of fear ends, and the age of potential begins. Guard it well, children of the younger star. You have made history, but the story is only beginning. Halberg turned his gaze toward the stars once more. The infinite void stretched before him like a canvas, yet untouched. Somewhere out there, Remnants of the Severants drifted, uncertain, scattered, their hive minds fractured. But humanity had learned that even in the face of incomprehensible threat, courage, defiance, and the unyielding spark of consciousness could bend the universe itself. And in that knowledge, Halberg felt a rare certainty, the kind forged only in the crucible of fire and choice. Humanity would rise, not as prey, not as victims, but as a force the galaxy could no longer ignore. The stars shone with new intensity as the fleet pressed onward, leaving the crucible behind, but carrying its power within them. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and ancient, but for the first time in countless generations, humanity was no longer merely surviving. They were awakening, they were ascending, and the universe would remember the age of unpredictability had begun.